Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be talking about some creative ways to mix a bass guitar. In a previous video I've gone over the conventional and typical ways to mix a recorded bass sound using equalizers and compressors, but in this video I'll show you some special effects and creative and unique ways of doing some kinds of special processing. I'm going to be showing you these things on an electric bass sound for a pop rock song. However, you could apply these techniques for things like synth basses instead of electric basses, or also for many different styles of music. The first thing I'm going to show you is the MaxxBass plugin from Waves. It uses some proprietary technology from Waves to do some cool things for your bass. And also, you could also use it for your entire mix and not just for your bass guitar. Then I'm going to talk about multiband processing. So this could be multiband compression, multiband distortion, or other effects that you can use like envelope shaping by splitting the frequency bands of your signal to do different processing on different bands. Alright, so let's get started. Here's the mix that I've been using. It's pretty straightforward. You've got drums on a mix down to a stereo channel over here, percussion, 2 acoustic guitar tracks, and you've got 2 electric tracks of rhythm guitar, then 2 tracks that kind of alternate of lead guitar, and over here is our bass. On my bass track, I recorded the bass clean without any effects direct into my interface from the bass. So the first thing I've got here is an amp simulator. I'll show you that. Then I've got Slate VCC, Slate VTM. I've got 2 compressors, 1176 and LA2A, and then an SSL channel to do my EQ. This is the conventional or typical way to mix the bass guitar. The first thing I want to do is talk about the Waves MaxxBass plugin. I'm going to show you the plugin just by inserting it at the end of the signal chain that I've got here. This is the conventional way of mixing. I'm just going to add in the Waves MaxxBass plugin now, show you its features and how you can use it just by adding it in at the end of your signal chain. So this plugin is pretty unique, and what it does is it creates harmonics that you add into your signal. And these harmonics are designed to trick your ear into perceiving low bass frequencies that might not actually be present at the output of the signal. So why would you want to use this? Let's say, for instance, people that are going to be listening to your music are going to be listening to it on maybe not the best quality speakers or headphones. So if you think people are going to be listening to your music on their iPod, earbuds, those speakers are small. They don't have a good frequency range. A lot of the low frequencies are not even being produced by the speakers in the headphones. So those are around the range of 20 hertz to maybe 40 hertz or 60 hertz that the speakers aren't going to be able to produce. What MaxxBass, this plugin, will do is you can use it to create harmonics that are higher than that, but will trick the ear into thinking that it's hearing frequencies lower than that. So it might create harmonics between 60 hertz and 200 hertz or something like that, but those harmonics are making the ear think that the low frequencies are louder than they really are, even if they're not even present in the signal. So that's the reason for it. It doesn't necessarily have to be because the speaker system that's going to be used to play back the audio can't handle low frequencies. There might be other reasons as well. For instance, you might want to filter out those really low frequencies from messing up your final mixdown limiter that you're applying, because the limiter might catch on to those really low frequencies and then make your mix not as loud because those really low frequencies are too present and it's limiting those frequencies. So you could strip out those really low frequencies and use MaxxBass to make sure that the ear is still going to be able to perceive those low frequencies even if they're not actually present. So it's a creative thing, creative kind of processing that depends on the way that the human ear hears and can be tricked into thinking that it's hearing lower frequencies that are actually not even in the signal. So I've got the plugin just initialized, and you'll see in the blue over here, you're seeing the low frequency signal of the original bass that's coming in. That's my electric bass. Then over here I can bring up the MaxxBass signal. These are the synthesized harmonics that were not present in my actual electric bass signal. And basically what you do is just blend these two signals together. And what's going on is there's a low frequency crossover point that your original bass signal is getting filtered out at. And then the MaxxBass signal kind of takes over from there using higher frequencies to kind of fill in the lower frequency that you're cutting out. So this is kind of like multi-band processing in the sense that your original bass signal is split into two bands. There's the higher portion of the signal, and then there's the lower portion of the signal that you're actually affecting inside of this plugin. So let me play you this back, and I'll bypass it to begin with. You can hear the song, then I'll get into the plugin and solo out the bass. All right, now I'll solo the bass. You can hear it. Okay, now I'll activate the plugin and go over its controls. First, I'm going to discuss, because I'm going to be switching back and forth between these to monitor different things, is you select the different things over here with these buttons, the audio button, the MaxxBass button, and the original bass button. The audio is a mix. This is what's being actually output of the plugin. That's a combined original bass and MaxxBass. Obviously, if you select the MaxxBass only, you're not going to hear the original bass or the blend between the two at the output. And that's why you have the MaxxBass. So this is a way that you can focus in on what you're hearing specifically of the harmonics that the software is adding in. Then you can just switch over to the original bass and hear just that separate from the MaxxBass that you're adding in. If you want to do things like change the volume over here of the original bass, you're blending between it and the volume of the MaxxBass. So what I'll do is start out with the original bass here at 0 and MaxxBass all the way down. Play it back and you can hear it. So this is the low frequency of the original bass. You can hear that the plugin is filtering out the high frequencies. And this is just the original low frequency of the bass. I can cut out that low frequency using this fader. Here's a MaxxBass. The volume here is only affecting what's going on in that audio. Now you have this frequency fader right here. Now what that's going to do is determine where the crossover point is between your original bass and the MaxxBass. So you're seeing right where the crossover point is. I can move that. I'll loop it back again. So by changing that frequency, you can do things like bring down the original bass, and then you're just left with the max bass. And what that's going to do is change the tone. So the harmonics are going to be a little bit higher here, but you can bring it down. Hear how those harmonics are filling out more of the low end. So right now I'm just listening to the original bass. I've got to cut out of the actual mix. This is how you can dial in different amounts of the cutoff point for the original bass. What you have to be careful of with this plugin is actually that you don't get too much bass, because it's easier when you're just listening to it to be like, oh, I like that. I'm going to crank that up a little bit. And you throw off the original balance. You might want to use it to add in more bass, or you might just want to use it to actually remove the ultra low end from your signal. So you just have to be careful. I think that sounds a little bit muddy, obviously. So I'm going to back this off a little bit. Blend between them. There's some more special controls if you want to get into more detail about what's going on. For instance, here you've got different shapes to the cutoff filter between the original bass and the max bass. So now we have the max bass extending lower because we only have a 6 dB roll off to our high pass filter of the harmonics, or you could have a 24 dB roll off so that's much sharper at the cutoff between the original bass and the max bass. Then you can also affect how the harmonics fall off on the high frequency range here. This control, if you want the harmonics to be focused more lower or have a little bit more present higher frequencies by doing this. Move it up a little bit. You can hear that I'm adding more low frequency there with the minus 6 dB roll off. The other thing that you have over here is a dynamics control, and this acts as an upwards compressor to raise the dynamic range of the harmonics. So when I increase this from 1 to 1, it goes all the way up to 4 to 1. It makes the harmonics that were quieter, it makes those louder. You can go from no compression. You can mix it in so that they are more present. Then you have an attack. This is kind of attack and release. The response is a timing control. So you might want to just add in a little bit of compression to the max bass signal. This is a setting that I pretty much like for this sound. I got it dialed in how I like. It might be a little bit boomy, but it's thickening things up. Just slightly. Bringing down more of the original bass. There's also a fair amount of presets that are included, from famous engineers and also some from Waves. This processor can be used for things like bass guitar or even kick drum, things like that, but it can also be used for your entire mix. And so, just scrolling through some of the presets. So they're saying things like the PC laptop, that's not going to be able to play back. A lot of low frequencies. That's what it's got going on. So I'll go back to what I had before. Pretty fast response. Somewhere in here. Fast decay. A little bit of this. Alright, so that's the MaxxBass plugin from Waves. That's all I wanted to show you. Hopefully that gave you an idea about how to use the plugin, all its controls and features, and give you some intuition about the kind of processing that's going on inside of the plugin. The next kind of thing I want to talk about is multiband processing. What I'm going to do here for this is keep this bass track, but actually make a duplicate of it. I'm going to do is take out a lot of these plugins and just be left with my amp sim that I'm going to use. Alright, I'm going to use this as my starting point and my signal. So I'll play it back and then I'll describe to you what I'm going to be doing here with this multiband processing. Okay, so the idea with multiband processing is that you want to perform some kind of effect or processing on different frequency ranges of your signal. So this bass signal has some energy in low frequencies and mid frequencies, and it's even got some energy in more higher frequencies. And the idea is maybe I want to perform one kind of effect, one kind of compression, one kind of distortion or something like that on just the low frequencies, but I want to perform a different kind of effect on higher frequencies. So multiband processing is going to allow you to do that. It's just a creative way to shape the tone of your bass a little bit different than you could if you were just processing the whole frequency range as a single signal. So, just to give you some idea about it, first I'm going to bring up the Waves Multiband C4 compressor. This plugin can be used to do multiband compression. And you set the frequency ranges using these sliders up here. You can also obviously change them using these numbers. However you want to do it. It also does some kind of equalization because you can increase the gain in each of these channels. So it's a little bit like a EQ in that sense. Then you can also come down here and change the kind of compression in each of the channels. So you have attack and release settings. and things like the range, which is going to how much it's going to compress, kind of like a ratio a little bit. There's a whole bunch of presets in here. A lot of times this kind of processing is used for vocals or for like an entire mix. And that's a typical way of doing it. You can use some of these kinds of presets to begin with also for a bass guitar. I'll just bring up a couple and go through them. You'll see kind of the typical attack and release settings for different bands. So you have slower attack, slower release going on up here, or for the low frequencies, and a little bit faster going on over here for the higher frequencies. I'll play it back and bypass it, and you can sort of hear it's a very subtle effect. You can adjust the threshold here too if you want more or less in your particular range. Maybe I'll load up some other ones that might be So here what's going on is you're just compressing really the low frequency and then kind of this higher de-esser, which the bass doesn't have a lot going on there. Kind of a synth bass way of doing it. Hopefully, just by showing you this plugin, you got some intuition about what multiband processing is. You split your signal into different frequency ranges, and you process each of these range of frequencies independently. What you can do with this plugin is actually, if you want to just listen to one particular range, you can do that. So here, you're just hearing the low frequency. You can add in the mid frequency, cut out the low frequency. Upper mids. Not a whole lot going on in the high frequency with my bass. Just some finger noise. You can bypass the processing in that range, so there's no compression going on here. What I'm going to do now is use this processor as a way of splitting the frequency ranges of my signal. So as you can see, I can isolate using the solo and the bypass and things like that the frequency ranges of my signal. What I'm going to do is create some auxiliary tracks and use this plugin so that I can add in other plugins and processors after it to do things like change the distortion or compression or envelope of just that frequency range of the signal. So let me get rid of it here. Pause this for a second. I'm going to create 3 mono auxiliary tracks. Create a send here. I'll send it out. How about bus 19? Make these bus 19. Bring it up. Rename this. Bass send. Okay. Now what you'll see, I've got it duplicated over here. It'll actually be pretty loud because I got 3 of them. So right now I've got the same signal going out to each of these. I'm going to call this low, mid, and high of my bass. The idea with this is that I want to split my bass signal into 3 different parts. The first is going to be the low frequency, then the mid, and the highs. So C4, the plugin, it has 4 frequency ranges. Although for my bass guitar, I don't really need that ultra high end. I don't really need all 4. So what I'm going to do, just open up C4 here, the first one. I'm going to use this first plugin to find the frequency ranges that I want and then duplicate them so that my cutoff points are the same in each of the instances of the plugin. So let me play it back first here. I want to find initially where I want that low frequency range cutoff to be. So I'm going to solo it. I guess what I actually should have done here is make the output of this bus 19. Get rid of this so I don't have the... I don't want this going out to my master fader. I just want it to be playing back on each of these channels. So what I'm going to do is sweep the frequency until I find the range that I think I just want my bass frequencies in. I think right about 130 is what I want. My bass frequencies. Let me focus on now the mid frequencies. To me, it's easier to find the frequency range that I want also if I just listen to the high frequencies. So I just want to find I'll listen to the mids. All right, so what I'm going to do here is copy this plugin, duplicate it, option, click, drag it over, duplicate this same plugin on the same settings and everything on each of the tracks. Go into my first one for the low frequency and just solo out the low frequency range. I've got the compressor bypassed. I'm not going to be doing compression right now, although you could use the plugin to do that. Next is my mid frequency range, and the third one is my high frequency range. Now, what I've got going on, if you do these together, you've got the full frequency range coming out of these plugins together. But now you have the option to add in plugins here to process each of these separately. So for instance, let's say I want to add in some kind of envelope follower. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to use the Transient Master. This is from Native Instruments. Just focus on my low frequency. Depending on the song, let's say I want to bring up the attack. and bring down the sustain so that the notes cut off quicker. Maybe you want to bring the sustain up for the low frequencies. Focus on your mid-range. Bring down, let's say that's kind of click or snap in the high frequencies you don't like. You could bring that out using the transient designer. Bring down that click if you wanted to. So this is a subtle effect that I'm adding in to do things like that. The high end transient is something I want to take out, so that's what I'm using this effect for. Alright, so that's one effect you could do. Another thing that comes into play when you've got a bass guitar is how the bass notes fit in with your kick drum. And sometimes you don't want these to kind of compete with each other in your mix, in the sense that your bass guitar player, a lot of times, maybe he'll play notes at the same time as the kick drum from the drummer. And that's a way that they can, the low end of your mix can be tight and fit together, and those parts can line up. However, when you've got low frequency signals at the same time in your mix, that can make the mix a little bit too full or muddy, and the electric bass, by overlapping in frequency with the kick drum, it makes the kick drum less punchy. So what you can do if you've got this kind of multi-band processing is actually sidechain the kick drum mix to do sidechain compression over here on just the low frequency range of your bass guitar track. So what I'm going to do is add in some kind of processor over here. Let's say, I guess, the new Solid Dynamics from Native Instruments I will use. It has a sidechain compressor, and I'm going to use that here. What I want to do is, I've got my drum mix. If I play it back, what I just want to focus on is my low frequency signal. So I don't want all the higher instruments to kind of get in the way and sidechain my low frequency of my bass. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this. Sure, why not? I'm going to add in an EQ over here. I'm just going to cut the high frequencies. I'll go ahead and use just the built-in one from DigiDesign. Play it back. Just focus on here. So right now I've got mostly just a kick drum coming through on this channel. See, just the low frequencies. You might not even be able to hear those over your headphones. What I'm going to do, send these down bus 20 and come over here to Solid Dynamics, key input on bus 20. Why didn't I rename this one? Kick sidechain. All right. Now how this works is I'm going to use that low frequency signal to determine when the compressor is acting over here. So I just want the compressor. The reason for this is when the kick drum hits, I want the low frequencies in my bass guitar to be turned down really fast. That way the sustain of the bass stays loud, but the punch of the kick drum cuts through the mix, cuts through the bass guitar, low frequencies. And so these things can kind of overlap without a problem. Let me show you how this is done. So you gotta turn on the sidechain. So this is too much compression I've got going on right now. And it's pumping a little bit because my release was too fast. Pumping a little bit, you can hear there. So I basically got it set up pretty good. Maybe even a little more higher ratio. So you can hear when the kick drum hits, it's kind of scooping out the What I'm going to do here is bypass these other ones. You can hear when the kick drum hits, it's adding in that compression to the signal. So there's not even any bass going on right now, but you can see that the kick drum was. But the higher portions of the signal aren't getting compressed. So that's just one special kind of thing you can do to make sure your bass guitar and your kick drum aren't competing with each other, that they're actually working together. And what you're going to do is just sidechain the low frequency part of your bass guitar. You don't want to sidechain and compress the higher frequencies because they're not really competing with your kick drum. It's just the low frequencies, and I've just used the sidechain. Every time the kick drum hits, it's going to add in that little scoop to the volume of the low frequency range. backing off. It doesn't need to be that dramatic. Alright, so that's like sidechain compression of just the low frequency range of your bass. Next thing I want to talk about is multiband distortion. What I'm going to use for this, I'm actually going to bring up the Waves GTR, and I'm going to use, I'm going to go ahead and just use the stomp boxes. I'll just use 4, that's plenty for me. Alright, I'm going to copy this over to each of the tracks. And now what I'm going to do is add distortion in on each of these tracks separately. Get it to a range that I like. Maybe I like different kinds of distortion for each of the different ones, from fuzz to all different ones. So why don't I just start out with the distortion. This is my low frequencies. Maybe I don't like that one. More of a fuzz. This is really probably what I'm looking for, more of a subtle effect on the low frequencies. Just dirty it up a little bit. Let's work on the mid-range now. Yeah, I want more of that. So I've done now, I've added in 3 different distortions on each of these frequency ranges. You can do these independent now. You can put different things on, compressors, distortions, it doesn't really matter. You can get really creative by doing this kind of multi-band processing. So hopefully that gave you guys some ideas about things that you can do, special kinds of processing, kind of tricks, multiband, things like distortion, multiband, compression, this kind of sidechain trick that you can use with your bass guitar and your kick drum without having to compress your whole frequency range between your bass guitar and your kick drum and those sorts of things. That's all I really wanted to show you. Hopefully that gave you some ideas. You know, this kind of multi-band processing, really I'm just touching the surface about all the different things that you can do. When you set up your signal this way, you can add in different kinds of effects all over the place. You know, you could add in modulation effects. You could add in, you know, a wah or something like that on different frequency ranges in your signal. That may or may not work, but what it does is it opens up the opportunity for you to just be creative, try different things that you might not be able to do. It might not even sound good if you did it across the whole frequency range of your instrument. You know, this doesn't necessarily have to be used for bass. You could use it for electric guitar and put like one kind of amplifier distortion on one frequency range of your signal and a different kind of amplifier distortion on a whole different frequency range and those sorts of things. It's really, the creativity is up to you to make it what it is. In the end, it's all about what sounds good. That's what you really care about as a mix engineer. What makes your mix sound better? If it means doing multi-band processing, that's what it takes. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Being able to experiment and having the more tricks of the trade that you have in your back pocket that you can pull up at any time and experiment with is only going to make your life, I don't know, not necessarily easier because you have to try out so many different things and there's so many different things to experiment with, but it's going to give you more just colors in your palette that you can work with when you're trying to put together a song, make your instruments work together, make the drums work together with the bass, and do things like that where they're side chaining together and things like that is just a way to make your mix even more complete and polished. So I'll just play it out at the end, let you hear what I've done with the distortion, and just get a last impression of the song. Take care, guys.